We had interest from a couple neighboring states, specifically Illinois, Michigan, and Wisconsin. So at that time, we had enough interest and enough following that Purdue made the decision to create a separate company outside the university. Because as it existed then, Purdue did all the marketing, all the development, the programming, managed the tool for all the crop growers, the applicators, and the beekeepers. So with the start of FieldWatch, it was set up as a nonprofit outside the university. And let me forward this slide here. There we go. So what was the original mission of Purdue, or of FieldWatch, also the mission we have today? It's really to develop and to manage and improve an easy-to-use, reliable, accurate online mapping tool that's intended to enhance communication between the key parties, being growers, beekeepers, and applicators. Some of the key tenets of when we started, the focus was hopefully to grow as a national crop and apiary registry, which at this point in time we have. We now are in 24 states. We're in Saskatchewan as well as in Washington, D.C. It was set up as a nonprofit. That is important because that is what you do today in terms of supporting us financially, helps us continue to be a nonprofit. The tool is voluntary, as all of you know, and it's free to use. Free for the beekeepers, free for applicators, free for crop producers to use. Those original tenets is still what we live by today. So we really enable collaboration and cooperation between the different groups. So this slide goes back several years now. This is the original case study to help drive the tool. And as you can see, it's dated, coming back all the way to 2008. Then as you advance forward, you can see that each year got a little bit better. And I would tell you, even now to this point, drift impact on tomatoes in Indiana is really negligible. There still is issues periodically, but the communication between the applicators and the tomato growers has increased so much. There is definitely an awareness where the tomato crops each year, especially as they rotate. And I'll touch on this in a minute, how we do that and how we communicate new locations every year. But the key quote at the bottom about participating in DriftWatch by Steve Smith, and Steve Smith's passed away a few years, but his quote is still very important to us today. It still gives us guidance to the importance of having this tool to be a stewardship tool in agriculture. When you look at the big picture, we have 3 key registries. We originally had 4, and we rolled 2 of them together a couple of years ago. DriftWatch being the key registry. We now have over 40,000 people that are registered to use it across the 24 states. As you can see there, really the focus is on sensitive or specialty crops. We also now map row crops that may have certain types of traits that may be right next to another field, a field of soybeans that is non-GMO right next to a GMO soybean field. That was in partnership with the University of Arkansas. We developed that tool and incorporated that into DriftWatch so that farmers could map not only their specialty crops, but their row crops. In 2015, we developed BeeCheck. And BeeCheck was developed because of some unique needs of the beekeepers. Specifically, they really wanted to be able to identify themselves as a hobbyist or a commercial beekeeper. They wanted the capability of moving their hives around. So with those things, and they wanted to identify how many hives they would have at a bee yard or an apiary. Those type of functionalities and features are not really prevalent in a crop mapping system. So we developed BeeCheck. Along with that, we developed an app that's available on Apple and Android devices, as you can see on the right. And that allows beekeepers to manage their beehives, add, move, etc. But the key feature of BeeCheck that really was something that was wanted was the ability for a beekeeper to mark their locations as private. That was important because beekeepers sometimes may be a little skeptical of a mapping system in terms of sharing location and information. So we gave them a capability of saying that they don't want to share that with everybody that can look at the map, but only with applicators that register with us. So we have two types of users. We have the producer, which would include the beekeeper and the crop producer. We also have the applicator user. Those are the two users that can register in our system and create accounts. The third registry that's in there, Seed Field Check, was one that was developed in collaboration with the Iowa Seed Association and Iowa Aerial Applicators. It was developed in 2020, right in the middle of the pandemic, and we rolled it out, and we had amazing success in terms of crop sites that were mapped, the use of the tool. Essentially, what it does is identify where workers are, young people, or people that are in groups of people that are in fields that are doing detasseling in the summertime. It's a tool that's used primarily in July, a little bit of June, a little bit of August, but it's really incumbent upon the key seed companies that participate with that to map and identify their locations. Then on a daily basis, they identify where the workers are. That information gets shared in near real time with aerial applicators in the area through our system to them, so they know on any given day where the workers are. So in that business, the aerial applicators, they start working at sunup and go to sundown in the summertime. This gives them information they didn't have before collectively. If you can envision this prior to having our mapping tool, they would have maps, and then they would share those maps either through some type of text message, an email, a phone call to the aerial applicators they worked with. It may or may not get to all the aerial applicators in that area. So with this solution that we offered up and we used, it got to all the applicators that register with us. It was so successful that we expanded it to four additional states in 21, being Indiana, Illinois, Michigan, and Nebraska. And then last year, we had some continued growth of adding some new states, Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Ohio, that now use the tool or have availability of use the tool to map seed corn crops in those locations. All this in the interest of sharing information with aerial applicators. Then lastly, FieldCheck. FieldCheck is our portal for the applicators. And as an applicator, you access that information and you will see everything. You'll see the vineyards, you'll see the beehives, you'll see workers in the fields as long as you have an account with us through FieldCheck. We've developed some more flexibility with FieldCheck because not only can you look at it on your computer browser, but you can also see it on your phone or your tablet. So as noted on the right-hand side, it shows FieldCheck as the app. If you don't have the app, you can certainly download it for free and use it and sign up to use the tool to know what's in your area. It's been highly successful. It allows applicators to see what's in their area. You can toggle on that app from 5 to 25 miles. And depending on how many crop sites and beehive sites are on you can have a lot of data on that app. So it has been highly successful too, that app. We continue to make improvements so they can be used. Applicators can put in an address that they're going to, so they can look at what they're going to in terms of where their next spray job is. So FieldCheck has worked really well, and again, it's the portal that gives access to all the applicators to see what's around them on their phone. There's a little thing at the top of it that you can look at the wind speed direction if you want to capture that too before you spray. So the mapping registries, the question comes up, how do we improve stewardship and promote sustainability? Well, first and foremost, we reduce the impact on sensitive or specialty crops. We reduce impact on pollinators by creating awareness of where they're at. In today's world, there are pollinators everywhere, and certainly managed hives, not only in rural areas and urban areas, but in suburban areas. They are everywhere. And as you probably know, understanding where those managed pollinators are also helps you understand where other pollinators may be present. So we help improve the stewardship and the communication by identifying those areas for somebody. And the intent is that an applicator would use the tool prior to spraying. No different than they're going to check the weather, they're going to check their equipment, they're going to check their chemicals, they're going to know what's there before they spray. That's the intent of the tool. Growers and beekeepers are going to map their locations voluntarily. and then that information gets shared. And then finally, using FieldCheck helps them just make a better decision. And it may not change anything, but it may help them understand that there's a group of beehives close by and they may want to reach out to the beekeeper. Or there may be organic crops close by and the label dictates that you have to be aware of organic crops in your area. Whatever it may be, this information becomes a powerful tool in terms of decision making and stewardship in advance of doing anything. So we put a little sample. So if you are in Illinois, you are well aware of the 5,000 or 6,000 crop site locations that we have mapped there. And you can see how packed it is. But being a Google Map tool, you can zoom in on this. And as you zoom in on the tool, it kind of expands and you see where the specific locations, the polygon is for the specialty crops or the specific latitude and longitude of the beehive location. You know, when we have a certain limitation in terms of colors and geocodes that can be used in those little pins. Those little pins there certainly identify fruits, vegetables, etc. on the map. And if you were to click on one of them, like in the bottom right-hand corner of the map, it would pull up exactly what is at that location. And a couple of important things about this. One, that it tells you it's a certified organic crop or a crop on that land. That means somebody has gone through, this farmer has gone through the 3-year process to get his land certified as organic. And he can grow crops on there and promote them as certified organic according to USDA standards. It also tells you exactly when he submitted those locations, when it was approved, and that it's active this year. The right-hand corner shows a red little dialogue that says it expires. The key thing to mention about that is that we are in the process, right in the middle of this process right now. It started in January, it goes through March and into April, where we send out email messages to growers and beekeepers, you know, asking a pretty simple question. And the question is everything going to be same in 24 as it was in 23? That's not the exact wording, but that's the intent of the message. If it's the same, they just click yes, everything stays on the map. If it's not the same and they want to alter it, delete it, modify it, they can certainly do that. But this gives us an opportunity to validate crop sites, beehive locations at the beginning of the year before work begins in the field. It's critical for us because as a company that relies on data, the integrity of the data is one of our key elements. Without that, it really would be, we would lose some credibility in the industry without having, you know, information out there that's credible and has been verified. And I would tell you each year in April, May, we archive locations, not because they're not active in there, because we have not heard back from somebody. When you look at the crop side of the business, we have a fairly high return percentage, or people saying yes or no. Beehives is a little bit less than that, probably less than 90% of affirmation on whether they're not or not they are there or not. So if we don't hear back from a beekeeper or crop producer, we're going to archive it. That means they're still in the system, but it just means they can't be seen until we get validation. And so sometimes what happens, you know, in the northern states, you know, Michigan, Minnesota, etc., you know, sometimes the beekeepers won't know until later if they still have bees and what they should do. It's not a big issue because they can certainly send us a message and we can help them out, or they can come back in later and reopen that site and validate it for the year. So the intent of this dialog box is really to connect the applicator to whoever is owning that land and growing there, so they can reach out if they need to and communicate with them. And you know, with 50,000 plus sites on there, that's a lot of information. That's a lot of information that's available to a pesticide applicator. So here's a map. This kind of gives you the big picture of FieldWatch in 2024. As the states, there's 24 states, you know, Saskatchewan, and then Washington, D.C. And Washington, D.C. is an interesting one because they've been on the map now for a couple of years, primarily because of urban beekeeping and suburban. So in that little 68 square mile area out there, there's potentially 400 to 500 beekeepers and locations. And the people that spray chemicals in Washington, D.C. are not spraying it because of agriculture. They're spraying it because they spray backyards, trees, shrubs, golf courses, right-of-ways. So it's a part of the business that we now have embraced, but I would tell you we really need to have a lot more
experience. Give me that Paul's number.
The people that are in that industry,
the person that we were having issues. So
it has been quite a good success story to embrace. It's helped us open up dialogue in other urban areas with other beekeeping groups that may represent urban and suburban beekeeping. So with that, we are now active there. I would also tell you right now, we are in conversation with 4 or 5 other states across the United States. They all have their different process and timeline, as well as a couple of provinces in Canada that have a high degree of interest in using FieldWatch for bees, for crops. So we expect some more growth this year in terms of locations, and it should continue to help perpetuate the good work that we're doing. One of the more interesting things with beehives is that right now, today, as an example, in California, we only map beehives in California. This is kind of a side note, and not all those beehives. There's probably 400,000 or 500,000 locations that are permanent in the state, but the rest of them, specifically the ones that come in for pollination, are coming from across the United States, depending on what state they're from, all the way from the East Coast to the Midwest to California. So those beekeepers are obligated, or the wholesalers they use when they put those bees on a truck, to map and identify them in California. They have a requirement that you identify your beehives. So when you have 1 million plus hives in the pollination area there in the almond groves, it's a pretty significant impact. So they'll be there probably for the next 30 or 60 days, maybe a little bit longer, and then move them back out. So it's a pretty easy process using our app, where they can move those hives back to the Dakotas, back to Montana, wherever it may be that they're at. So you can see down on this the states that have the most producers, the states that have the most beekeepers. We just like to point that out. We have some that are big time users and some that are still getting active with it. But the first couple of years that a state's involved, it takes a little time to ramp up in terms of creating awareness with the grower groups, with the extension service, with beekeeping groups. Once we get that interest and get momentum, we see a lot of usage. And then we really start promoting it with the applicators that are in that state or in that area. The other thing about DC is interesting is that, the applicators that spray there, a lot of them come from Maryland and Virginia. So good news is they were already familiar with what we do. So it was a pretty easy transition for them to use the tool. Oh, there we go. So I've got a couple of slides here. I just want to show some of the growth we've had. For this next couple slides, this is pretty exciting for us. This really reaffirms that we're doing the right thing when we see this growth year over year. So you can look at the number of producers using DriftWatch, the number of applicators using FieldCheck. Now with applicators, we have over 14,000 people that have registered as an applicator. It's a pretty simple process. I mean, for an applicator to sign up, it takes probably less than 2 minutes to create an account and identify your area where you work. Because we ask applicators to identify an area so that we can send them messages. And it may be just one county, it may be several counties, or they can use the mapping tool itself and create an area if they cross state lines or they cross multiple counties. The important thing with that is that our communication is via email. So anytime there's a new location, modified location in their area, we're going to send them an email. And the email will say, click on this and you'll see what's new in your area or modified. And that's how we communicate, between us and the applicators. And that's how they understand it and see what's new in their area, which they may not be aware of, or they may be. We don't know sometimes. But it helps us because it defines the specific area where the messages go to. It's a little geo fence that they identify the areas of the county or counties that they use. And with the number of producers we have adding each day, we have a lot of sites. I just checked this morning and we probably have 150, 160 sites pending that have already been submitted here in calendar year 2024. The peak will probably happen in the next 3 months where there'll be a lot of activity in terms of new sites being added, modified, that type of thing, as we continue to grow and go into the growing season here in 24. So this just references the mapped acres. As you can see, the significant growth in 22 and 23. As you probably can figure out, the growth in mapped acres really came from seed field check. We had not quite 500,000 acres mapped last year in seed field check. And on any given day, we would have 400 to 500 users or fields activated. So this shows the growth. We expect this growth to continue because not only are there a lot of seed corn fields, but we have organic fields that are large and a lot of other crops. Each year, some of the larger producers, as an example, Razorback Farms, Del Monte, they'll map 500 or 600 locations. And we've now simplified that process so that we can just take their file and upload them as long as they have it on the system already. It makes it much simpler than them trying to draw hundreds of locations on the map. So that feature was developed last year, and we continue to push it out farther and farther. So if farmers have multiple fields, 15, 20 or more, it's really simple if they keep it in a database or in a system where it has a polygon attached. We can just upload it to the system. It's fairly simple, and it happens fairly quick. So here's the bee check numbers. We actually had to separate these because these were all one chart until we realized that the number of beekeepers looked pretty small when you put it on the same slide as hives. The hive numbers continue to grow each year. You can see that big jump a couple of years ago. That was really the advent of the California beehives coming online. This will continue to grow as we add more and more beekeepers. And beekeepers add hives, we add states. So this is a big growth opportunity for us. And we spend a lot of time working with beekeepers to help them map their sites. And so that information can be shared. It's a pretty straightforward and simple story for them. Now, if they want to use the app and then they're very comfortable with using technology, again, it probably takes a couple of minutes to create an account on BeeCheck and map their location. And the nice thing is, I mean, it's their tool, their phone or their tablet is GPS enabled. And so they just click place here and the site goes on the map. So as crop sites and beehives get added to the map, sometimes people often ask, well, how do they get on the map? What's the process? Well, it's a simple process. You know, the beekeeper, the crop producer creates an account, maps the location. That gets submitted. That does not get submitted to us at FieldWatch, but to a representative or a liaison in each state we work with. We call them data stewards because they receive the data, the submissions, they review them and approve them. Most of them are reviewed just in a few days for approval, and then they go on the map. Until they get approved, they don't go on the map because we really need somebody in the state with local knowledge and local information to validate them. You know, when you map crops, we really try to keep the map to include just the crops and not all the other buildings, not the backyard roses, everything else, just the crops, because it's important information and we want to make sure the applicators have accurate information. I mean, if there's a greenhouse, that certainly can be included. There's a drop down that's one of the crops that can be added. So as we partner with the states, our liaison is super critical to us. That data steward, because not only are the ones reviewing approving, but they're also our ambassador to create awareness within the state, to partner us up with the Extension Service, the grape growers, the beekeeping groups, etc., the Agribusiness Association, which all have become key partners for us over the last couple of years. That data steward role is very key for us. As a small organization, we are dependent, our success is dependent on them, and so we work very closely with all of them. Here's the seed field check numbers, and as I mentioned, you can see we will probably top 500,000 acres in seed field check. And this tool is somewhat unique because it totally streamlines that process of identifying these fields. And as I previously mentioned, at any given point last July, we'd have 500 locations active or occupied with workers. The seed company will go in each day. They can use their tablet or phone or their computer, identify the fields which have already been uploaded. We uploaded about, last year was about 5,000 fields. So they're already existing on the site. They just go and identify which ones that are going to be active on that day. It's also incumbent upon the seed company to deactivate those sites when the workers leave, because we've got to create a partnership and a relationship between us, the aerial applicators, and the seed companies. It's a pretty simple process, but it's really incumbent upon the seed company to own that data. And they've done a phenomenal job. We're very lucky that they've all embraced it, because it saved them a lot of time and money. And when we can communicate this information in a near real-time basis to an aerial applicator, it helps them plan. So the seed company has a choice. They can say that the field is occupied today or will be occupied tomorrow, either or. And if it's tomorrow, that means the seed company will share that information. The aerial applicator will know that it's okay today, but tomorrow they can plan accordingly. It's a planning tool. So at the end of the day, those fields all turn off, which means they change status. And if there's going to be somebody there again tomorrow, the seed company will go back in and reactivate that. So this process goes on for most of the summer, at least in the middle of the summer, when there's a lot of spraying going on in the 5 states, and hopefully the other 3 states this year. But you can see this growth has been phenomenal. And to our awareness, we've not heard of any issues like there were a few years ago. It really is done in the interest of worker protection, worker safety. But I would tell you, and we will affirm this, it is not a worker protection tool, but it helps promote and do things in the interest of worker protection. So all in, this tool has been a phenomenal addition to what we already do. As I mentioned, the applicators today can see those seed corn fields where the workers are. They can see the beehives that may be a couple miles down the road. They can see the grapes that may be a few miles from that, all in one portal. And we take that data and it's shared with them so they can make a decision. So the question now is, what about the impact of what we're doing? Well, as I've mentioned, we work with the Department of Agriculture and in a couple of states with the Extension Service or with the university as our liaison. They help us promote the tool. They help us develop and improve the tool. Every development that we've done over the last 10 to 12 years has been because of input from another organization that has said, have you thought about this? Can you do this? Can you give us this type of data? So as you look at this and experience this information in the tool and you have ideas, please share them with us, because that's how we're going to improve and become more viable going forward. Now, we've also had significant support from the trade associations over the last few years. That relationship has been phenomenal for them to continue to support what we do in the interest of stewardship. Not only Crop Life, NAAA, and ARA, as mentioned up there, but the local organizations, the local agribusiness associations in each state, they help promote what we do as they meet with their applicators. And, the bottom line then is, the affirmation that our success is still there is the ongoing double-digit growth we continue to see. We don't expect anything to change this year going forward in terms of growth of new sites, new users going into this calendar year. A couple of years ago, now this information is a little dated now, and we need to revisit some of this. But we did a survey because we wanted to get direct feedback from users. And this is what we heard from some of the FieldWatch users. And you can see on here, I don't have to read these, but we got people that were producers in different states, took time. It was a very simple survey, 7 or 8 questions, and they answered this and gave us some candid feedback on the tool. This is some of the positives that we got out of it. We had some other suggestions too that I would tell you that we took to heart and that we now have incorporated with our serve or with the tool. This was the feedback from them. And then from BCheck, we also got a lot of feedback from beekeepers in terms of the tool and how to make it easier, simpler, and having impacts on pollinators and not just manage beehives. So the communication link and the way it works, as we know, it's somewhat anecdotal, but an applicator prior to spraying will often call the beekeeper. They already have the contact information from the site, and they'll just have a conversation about, I need to spray this week on Thursday or Friday. What's a good time for you? And the beekeeper would say, because beekeepers know their bees, they know everything about them. They'll say, you know what, if you spray in the morning before 8 or 8:30, we're good, because bees are still there, or late in the afternoon. Or a beekeeper may take another approach and say, I'm going to close up my hives for the day. You spray when you need to. I want to keep my bees right here. That's how it works. And it happens all the time in terms of those communication connections between that applicator and beekeeper. And with hundreds of thousands of beehives out there, there's ample opportunity for an applicator every time they spray to see a beehive nearby where they're spraying. So as I mentioned, we have a lot of partners, and our success has really been magnified by partnering with these organizations. So this is a handful of some of the technology partners we work with today. And if you can envision this, they have mapping systems that's used by people that spray chemicals, and they consume our data, or they have a link with us and they ingest our data onto their mapping platform. For the most part, they add it as another layer on the map. So when an applicator will see their work order, they can turn on and off the beehive locations, the specialty crop locations, so it doesn't cloud the map, then they can turn it back on so they know. They update their systems constantly, sometimes daily, sometimes several times a day. But these are some of the mapping platforms that we work with today, and we successfully worked with over the last several years in terms of really improving what we do. So they have electronic connection with us. It's called an API, and it's a very simple thing that they can just extract data out of our system, overlay it on there. So as an applicator, you're not toggling back and forth between the FieldCheck tool on the computer and your precision ag tool. You can look at it all in one tool. So as we continue to grow, these partners of ours are going to be critical for us to continue to grow, because as a small organization, as I mentioned, we don't have the capability to do all the outreach to all the people that really need the tool. The applicators being the key beneficiary of what we do, these partners are critical for our success. A couple of years ago, I just wanted to highlight this. This was continue with the theme of partnership and FieldWatch. We did a media campaign in Illinois, and we did print media, we did some radio ads, and so we took this information and shared it. This was supported by the Illinois Farm Bureau, the Department of Ag, and IFCA to help get information out. We saw a 10 to 15% increase in number of users and sites in Illinois when we did this. And the reason I bring this up, because if you're in a state and you want to partner with us and grow the database and grow the information, this is one way we can do it. We have tons of collateral. We have a lot of content. We just need some partners to work with. And I highlight this because we want to replicate this across the United States wherever we can, especially with the Farm Bureau, with the Agribusiness Association, Department of Ag, collectively, all three of us working together to help promote what we do. And it's been well received. And we got to believe that if we continue doing this type of thing, it's a very simple process. But it takes a little coordination to get it in the right places to the right people. The radio ads are kind of an interesting thing to do. We actually hired a professional to do that instead of us doing the verbiage, but we thought it was well received on some of the farm radio stations. So as you expand your impact, this kind of shows how we're supported today. Yeah, we're supported financially. We're an open book. We like to share with people how we are supported. as a nonprofit. First and foremost, the member states that we will operate in. And we have key sponsors, the chemical companies, retailers, large co-ops, small co-ops across the United States. Some of the trade associations support us, and we also have applicators, producers, and some of the software companies. So collectively, that's the support arm, and we all just work in unison with them. We show us in the center of it because, well, it's our presentation, so we're showing us at the center of it. But suffice to say, it's important for us to reach a lot of organizations on the financial side, but also other companies too, as it said, farmers and the people that do processing, food companies. There's a vested interest by consumers in knowing about their food and where it's coming from. And, is there residue on it? Has there been people spraying nearby? That information. So collaborations with FieldWatch helps improve that dialogue, the communication that the right things are being done in agriculture. So as we look at our stewardship tool and sustainability, it's important that we have organizations that want to partner with us across the board, across the value chain here in agriculture. Advancing ESG commitments, helping protect biodiversity and pollinators. And as I mentioned earlier, as we identify and map managed pollinators, but that also makes an impact on other local native pollinators that are in the same area. We know that. So by mapping and sharing those and sharing that information with applicators, there's a belief that it helps protect them in the long run. And then really, using a tool that's voluntary and free to use, it can have some positive impacts in reducing regulatory pressures and trying to work together within agriculture at the fence post rather than trying to have some regulation or law that says you dictate how you have to do business. We really want to foster the importance of our tool out there, that we help embrace that and help encourage people to work together and don't rely on a regulatory platform to get the work done. But if you work together and help support a voluntary tool, we believe there's significant positives that come out of that. So there's a question about how you can maximize your partnership relationship with FieldWatch. You know who we are, where we're at, you know how to get a hold of us. Continue to introduce to a broader circle within your organization, within your state, the sustainability organization, stewardship, regulatory people, communications, possibly the media. Listed below are some of the stewardship tools that we've worked with in terms of providing content. If you need content for something, we don't have a lack of content. We have a lot of it. You can pull as much as you want off of FieldWatch.com. That's an open resource for you to pull information. We try to keep that updated. Parts of this presentation are on FieldWatch.com, as well as some answers to questions, frequently asked questions, Q&A. It identifies what we do, how we do it, and why we do it, and the importance of having a tool like FieldWatch working within agriculture. As we continue to grow, one of our key opportunities is really working with non-agriculture organizations, whether they're spraying trees, whether they're spraying along roadsides. In fact, I would tell you that one interesting story about roadsides is that one of the reasons that West Virginia joined us a few years ago is because the deputy commissioner there had beehives and they were spraying in front of his house, and they stopped to ask him about it. And he said, yes, he had beehives in the back, and made him start thinking it would be much easier if they already knew that. And so that started the conversation. And thus now we're working in West Virginia mapping beehives and asbestos crops. It was a pretty simple thing, but those people that were spraying the roadsides, it's probably a contractor for the county, or it could have been county people doing it. They knew enough to stop and ask the question, and then the deputy commissioner took it from there. So it was a wonderful thing. It was a great success story, and we like to replicate that as much as we can. So the other thing we have available, we have a lot of collateral out there. Pretty simple. You can download these as a PDF and you can share them. We update these as often as we can to keep updated with if we add new states or new functionality so that you know. Depending on what your role is, you can just pull these right off and then share those electronically as a PDF. It's not a huge file. It's fairly easy to do. Or if you want to print them, want to use them at a trade show, a conference, or a meeting, you're welcome to it. Or if you have questions about it, feel free to ask us. We'd certainly be happy to answer those questions and help give you some guidance on the easiest way to do this. Then finally, I threw this slide up here. I kind of put this one together at the last moment because as we get into the growing season and the spraying season, if you are spraying or farming, you may see these signs out there. We developed these signs several years ago in collaboration with a local firm here in the Indianapolis area. That's a fulfillment location for us. Because there was some interest in terms of putting a sign, and in the middle there's a flag. That flag was a collaborative project with the University of Missouri Extension Service several years ago, so that you could get that flag if you have a beehive location. You get a couple little tie wraps, put on a pole, put it next to your beehive so that somebody can see exactly where the beehive is. These other signs are available. We sell them at our cost. We sell thousands of them. And it's always a fascinating thing to me at the end of the year to see how many of these signs we've sold. Because we have apps, we have Google Maps, we have all this technology. But these simple communication signs that go out in front are certainly a complement to what we do online. And we like to talk about it. And I almost didn't put this in, but I thought, yeah, people may see those things. So you have a choice of signs, whatever you'd like to order. You can order them right through our website. It's fairly simple. Go on there, put the amount, and then have them shipped to you. And as I said, we ship thousands of these each year. And they are not a forever sign. They'll last several years based on weather and based on how they're protected. But they come with a stake. You stick them in the ground in front of your crop or your field or nearby, so there's an awareness, because you definitely can see these things for sure. So with that, that's my final slide. I just wanted to share what FieldWatch is doing this year, a little bit about our growth, our opportunities this year in terms of doing new things and continue to grow and support agriculture in the best way we can. I want to thank all of you for joining this afternoon, especially our board members that took time out of their day to join us. They're on here too. And all of our other partners that have joined us this afternoon can just continue to support what we do. So thank you. And I'll move. Yeah, that's the last one. So we can pause. I think if there are questions, we could probably take questions. We have a few minutes left. I can give you back some time in your day if you have a question. If not, the chat's open, or you have our email if you want to communicate with us. Do we have any questions? I don't think I'm muted anybody.
Don't see any questions at this point, Bob.
Okay. Well, with that, I want to again thank everybody for joining this afternoon. I'll give you a few minutes back on your Tuesday afternoon, give you an opportunity to get ready to watch the rest of the basketball season as we head into the spring and to growing and planting season. So everybody have a great day and a good week, and thanks for joining.
Thanks, Bob.